because the world is going through an awful time, an incredibly difficult time, and we have a very grim future in front of us, for which our own children are going to be the people who are going to suffer really. So it's very important that we really address these issues. So I'm going to go through some of the thoughts, some of the views expressed by Krishnamurti on education, and demonstrate towards the end of the presentation how these have influenced education in the schools that I'm familiar with, the Krishnamurti schools, and in what way they are connected with some of the crises that are going on today. So that's just a screen about Krishnamurti, which you can have a look at later. These are the 6 KFI schools in the country right now. There's Rishi Valley School, the oldest one of them. I'll move a bit. There's Rajghat Besant School, which is also quite old. And the school KFI in Chennai. Rajghat Besant School is in Varanasi. Sayadri School near Pune. Valley School in Bangalore. And Pathshala near Chennai. I myself am located in Valley School. Recently, we started a teacher education program, of which I am the director. So, this is a brief look at some of the crises facing us, just to show how grim the situation is and how urgent it is that we need to address this situation. First of all, the most conspicuous one is the environmental collapse happening around us. I mean, insecure, frightening future for our children in particular. All around the world, we see this phenomenon of rising authoritarianism, governments which are becoming more and more hostile, hyper-nationalism among the public, forces of fundamentalism, religious fundamentalism, and war also. Now, the latest news is that nuclear testing is on the horizon. Then we have this problem of consumerism, mindless consumption, incredible amount of plastic waste being generated by that, and related to that is worship of profit, worship of status, and a huge emerging gulf between the rich and the poor. Then very strong forces which are threatening the social fabric, the need for identity, which is being expressed in so many parts of the world. Deep polarizations between different sections of society, deep divisions. And then this tremendous addiction to entertainment. We have created so many avenues for entertainment and we just get lost in them. And to get allied to that, linked to that is this disease of boredom, the disease of loneliness, and the frightening meaninglessness of life that many, many young people are beginning to feel these days. It's not something, it's not to be taken lightly. So this is just a sort of collage of some of the things, maybe I've missed out some also in this picture, some of the things that are happening in the world today. And what is important is that these crises have not come out of outer space. They are not the creation of some alien intelligence. We are the creators of these crises. Every one of them has come out of our own thinking, our own attitudes, our own behavior. And unless we can address these things in some way, some meaningful, happy way, then we ourselves are going to suffer much more. So let's see what we can do. Now the thing is, alongside all this, there's also a world which seems like magic. You have mind-boggling accomplishments of science and technology, smartphones which we all carry around in our pockets, computers, artificial intelligence, miracles of astrophysics and modern surgery. Really, miracles there's no word which captures it strongly enough. It's really miraculous, the kind of things that we see, material science. And here's a very witty saying of the sociobiologist E.O. Wilson, when he says the real problem of humanity is that we have Paleolithic emotions, medieval institutions, and godlike technology. And then Yuval Harari says, if we are so smart, then why are we so stupid? Now we have to be able to respond to these statements. If we are to have a meaningful education system, we can't ignore these kinds of remarks because they are really very penetrating remarks. So Krishnamurti asks out here, why are we fragmented like this, broken up? What has gone wrong with us? In one direction, we are so extraordinarily intelligent. In the other direction, we are so extraordinarily barbarous. So here's a question. Where do problems come from? Where do problems originate? Whether it is war, our terrible attitude towards nature, very, so much based on exploitation, our pursuit of entertainment and pleasure, our tendencies to divide, to polarize, to identify. Where do all these problems come from? And where do they get their vitality? How come if they come around, they just stay and they have just such a tremendous life in them? Is it because we give importance to things that are unrelated to reality? We have created things which are actually fictional, which don't exist, and yet we give tremendous importance to them. They are illusions, really, make-believe. And then why does education ignore such questions? Why is it that our education has focused so much on academic subjects, which have nothing to do with all these, and they completely ignore our own inner psychological nature? And what's been our response to problems in the past? The traditional solution everywhere is what you can call social engineering. Social engineering is just a fictitious term where you imagine that we are like machines. In a machine, you apply a lever somewhere and the force gets transmitted and the effect is felt somewhere else. So we imagine that we can do the same for society. We have laws, we have policing, reward and punishment, and we imagine that by applying strong enough force in one place, we can really affect the behavior and the nature of people somewhere else, which is a completely false assumption. It never actually happens. So what the traditional procedure always has been: examine the symptoms, work from the outside, and then modify from the outside, and hope that something is going to happen on the inside, which actually it never does, because you're only altering the symptoms. I hope I'm not going too fast. So what are the traditional aims of education? Well, these are very obvious, so I'm going to go quickly. Imparting knowledge and skills, reading, writing, computing, fostering critical thinking, creating thoughtful citizens, preparing individuals for the workplace, promoting general development of various kinds. And all these nobody would protest against. They are all very reasonable aims. Unfortunately, we are very complicated beings. We are consumed by the desire for psychological security. We are driven by the urge to power, the urge to dominate, the urge to conquer, the urge to possess, the urge to identify. And the result is this. See, I think I'd like to just make a remark here. It's not contained in the slide, that's why I'm saying it here. That it's important not to identify all the problems of today's world with the education system that is there prevalent right now. The education system that we have had, that we have right now, is about 200, 250 years old. It's the product of the Industrial Revolution. But it's not as if the problems that we have today in the world have only been created in the past 250 years. They are very old problems. War has been going on for thousands of years. Start from inside.
This speaker is
माइक में वो स्पीकर बज रहा है अनपिन नहीं वो डायरेक्ट है
Sorry, I'll just go on.
You take this, try this one, the middle one.
Shall I put this off?
Yeah.
All right, I'll put this off.
Yeah, that is
We be able to hear you otherwise.
So these problems have not been brought about only in recent times. For example, if you look at say, the most conspicuous event of the last 500 years, they have been the colonial expansions which emerged from Europe and went on to all around the world. Canada, South America, North America, Australia, Africa is probably the continent which has suffered the most as a result of these colonial expansions. All that took place starting about 400 years back or so. And so these problems originate from our own nature, and unless we somehow are able to address these kinds of tendencies of ours, they're going to continue. What is the purpose of education? Is it to master skills and techniques and become highly efficient in one's work? Here is one answer given by Martin Luther King, where he says, the function of education is to teach one to think intensively and to think critically. And then he adds, but education which stops with efficiency may prove to be the greatest menace to society. The most dangerous criminal may be the man gifted with reason but with no morals. And then a famous physicist, David Bohm, who has worked with both Krishnamurti and with Einstein, great quantum mechanics person, writes here, we are faced with a breakdown of general social order and human values that threatens stability throughout the world. Existing knowledge cannot meet this challenge. Something much deeper is needed, a completely new approach. I am suggesting that the very means by which we solve our problems is the problem. And Einstein says, also a very insightful statement, very well-known statement. We cannot solve our problems with the same thinking we used when we created them. So, unless we know why we have created all the problems enumerated in that earlier slide, the origins of environmental, the breakdown that's happening, the origins of nationalism, the origins of authoritarianism, the origins of general bullying that is going on all around the world, our tendency for our addiction to entertainment, unless we know where they have originated from, they are just going to get replicated in whatever we do. So in school, we learn how to reason. That's considered to be one of the very important parts of school. Shouldn't we learn the consequences of these as well? Why we have group identity, why we have groupthink, why we depend on authority, why we are so addicted to possessiveness, to attachment and emotional dependence, why we have pride, why we have the problem of love of power, a deep problem in today's world, the love of power and the worship of status and success. Shouldn't this also be part of education? Shouldn't it be part of education to understand what it means to care and to love? Krishnamurti writes here, we never realized that to have order in the world outside, there must be order in us. Our own house is the most important thing to clean up first, not the world around us. So I have put down in this slide here, against this backdrop of crises and vast scale of suffering, what is a teacher's responsibility beyond the teaching of various subjects? What is the role of a teacher? So different answers have been coming forth here, and it's worth pondering what we really mean by a teacher. What is a teacher to do faced with a child, whether it is a teacher as a parent, as talked about in the previous presentation, it could be a situation at home. Parent is also a teacher. Or you're teaching a child in a classroom. It's the same thing. You have a certain responsibility. Now, Krishnamurti, I'll have a few quotes from Krishnamurti here. He writes here, the ignorant human being is not the unlearned, but he who does not know himself. Unlearned in the sense, the person who is not a scholar, who has not studied many different subjects. The ignorant human being is not the unlearned, learn it, but he who does not know himself. Understanding comes only through self-knowledge, which is the awareness of one's total psychological process. Thus, education, in the true sense, is the understanding of oneself. What we now call education is a matter of accumulating knowledge from books. Such education offers a subtle form of escape from ourselves. Like all escapes, it creates misery. Conflict results from wrong relationship with people, with things, and with ideas. And until we understand that relationship and alter it, gathering facts and acquiring skills can only lead to engulfing chaos and destruction. Now I'll pause the presentation here for a moment to speak about this. See, self-knowledge is being talked about here, understanding oneself. Self-knowledge is a term which goes very far back in the past. Socrates talked about it, the Buddha talked about it. The last message that the Buddha gave to those around him was, some of you may know it, be a light unto yourself. And if you're a light unto yourself, you will be a light to the world. What does it mean to be a light to oneself? What does self-knowledge actually mean? It sounds like a nice term, but what does it actually mean? And here, a hint of that meaning has come forth. When it says, conflict results from wrong relationship with people, with things, and with ideas. And one of the first things about self-knowledge is to understand one's relationship with the world. And relationship consists of so many things. Relationship with people, that's the first simplest one, obvious one. What is my relationship with people around me? Not people in the abstract, but actual people around me. Is my relationship one of power? Is the relationship of authority? Is there a relationship of dependence? Is there a relationship of respect and mutual learning? What's the substance of that relationship? Then what's my relationship with things? What's my relationship with property? What do I, is there a psychological component in property, sir? Do I try to use property to prop up my self-image? You'll notice that we human beings do. For example, take a car. Many of us may be having cars. What is a car? You need a car only to get from point A to point B. It has a purely functional purpose. It has no other purpose beyond getting you from point A to point B. But we don't view it like that. We use a car to show that we are somebody important, that we can afford rich, big, fast cars. I like to show that my car can go faster than your car. My car is superior to yours. So we are in love with property. A house is a place which is supposed to house us, give us shelter, not a place to show off. But property has become a means of establishing status, establishing power, establishing a certain image. So we have a completely distorted relationship with things, and therefore we misuse things in a very drastic way. Half of consumerism, why half? 90% of the problem of consumerism will be solved once for all if we have proper relationship with property, because we don't need to buy things, we don't need to exhibit all the things that we have. It's very important. And therefore, can this be part of a schooling curriculum also, to know what your relationship with property and things is? Also, the third point, relationship with ideas. That may not be so critical at the school level, but in society it is. Not for young people, but for older people. The way we exploit ideas, the way we use ideas to depend on ideologies, the whole problem of fundamentalism, when I become attached to an ideology and then try to force my ideology onto you. Thank you. So that what happens in that is that ideology is more important than human beings. You're not important, but I have to see that my ideology is accepted by you. So it's a terrible statement about human relationship when ideology becomes more important than the human being. So you see the truth of the last line. Until we understand that relationship and alter it, merely gathering facts and acquiring skills can only lead to engulfing chaos and destruction. And Krishnamurti adds, in overemphasizing technique, we destroy humanity. Technique without self-understanding only leads to ruthlessness, produces ruthless human beings. Life is so many things. Life is a vast collage. It is pain, it is joy, it's beauty, it's ugliness, it's love. And when we understand it as a whole, that understanding creates its own technique. So here, another lens to show, another point to focus on about self-knowledge. Without understanding yourself, Krishnamurti says, there is no action which does not breed more conflict, more misery, more confusion. If you do not know how the structure of your mind operates, how you feel, what you think, what your motives are, why you do certain things and avoid other things, how you pursue pleasure, unless you know all this, you are capable of deceiving yourself, of creating great harm, not only to yourself, but to others. Education should help us, one last slide on this. Education should help us discover lasting values, so that we do not merely cling to formulas or repeat slogans. It should help us break down our national and social barriers instead of emphasizing them, for they breed antagonism between man and man. Unfortunately, the present system of education is making us subservient, mechanical, and deeply thoughtless. Though it awakens us intellectually, that it certainly does. We learn great ideas, great techniques, beautiful theories, our problem-solving techniques are enhanced. So it pushes us up very high intellectually. But on the other side, it leaves us completely the same. We are absolutely no different from what we were. So there's a huge gap which is being created within us. It leaves us incomplete and uncreative. Therefore, we must ask, is there a different kind of education? A school is a place where one learns, firstly, the place and relevance of knowledge. Now, the relevance of knowledge is something that everyone gets to know in school, because it is so, especially in science and technology, knowledge is so central, so pivotal. But to discern between scientific factual knowledge and psychological knowledge. What is psychological knowledge? When one accumulates a lot of baggage about people, about societies, and you have a lot of images we operate on, we classify human societies the same way that we classify the periodic table. You referred to the periodic table. Having a periodic table makes a lot of sense when you're dealing with materials, because you can use materials much more efficiently when we have classified them and we know their properties. Classifying human beings is a disaster. But the same tendency that we have used in the sciences, we use for human beings as well. Why do we do that? Can we also learn in school the importance of relationship that is not based on attachment? This sounds a bit odd. What does attachment do? Attachment to ideas. Attachment can can act as a corrupting influence to us, because you start slowly losing your autonomy, losing your sense of being able to. Autonomy is not a good word, as has been pointed out in the previous talk, but your sense of being able to think something true, through and through, in an accurate, honest way. Once you become dependent, you twist your reasoning to suit the situation. You lose your sense of being able to think with clarity and honesty. Attachment is a very risky thing. Then the importance of observing the world and yourself to see things exactly as they are, without self-deception, without self-projection. And finally, the art of listening, looking, and learning. I'll say more about some of these things in later slides. Just as an example, Krishnamurti was once answering a question posed by one questioner who asked him, "What is the significance of teaching history to a child?" History as a subject tends to be taught as a subject. That in this year this happened, in this year this empire did this, and that king did that, and whatever. Various events. You go through a sequence of events. But Krishnamurti here says that if history is a story of in brief, this is only given part of this point. If history is a story of humankind, the story of human beings, then both the educator and the young are also the human beings. It is their story, not merely a story of kings and wars. How can the educator help the student to understand the story of himself, which is the story of the past? If you are the educator and I am the young student, how would you help me understand the whole nature of myself? Myself being the whole of humanity, my brain the result of 1,000,000 years. It's all in me. The violence, the competition, the aggressiveness, the brutality, the fear, the pleasure, and the occasional joy and perfume of love. How will you help me to understand all this? It is not an exaggeration, though it may sound like it, to say that in me, as a human being, is really contained all the tendencies that human beings have. It is not as though I can say, "Oh, I'm not a violent person." Well, those are all the violent people are all there. I'm not a violent person. If I really am honest, I will find all these tendencies inside me also. Violence, the competitive urge to put down other people, the aggressive need, brutality, fear. Fear is something we all carry in us. Fear of various kinds. Fear of public opinion. Fear of what your neighbor will think of you. Fear of being proved wrong or going wrong. And one fear which we all have, the fear of death. So fear is something which is very, very basic to human beings. And then the occasional joy and perfume of love. How will you help me to understand all this? So then, self-knowing can happen only in the mirror of relationship. There's a term which very often has been used by Krishnamurti, the mirror of relationship. It is only that mirror in which you can see yourself clearly. Just as there is an actual mirror in which we look when we are combing our hair or whatever, there is such a mirror in which you can see your psychological nature. And that's the mirror of our own relationship, which means our reactions, the words that we use, the way we behave, the way we respond to each other, the way I respond to criticism, the way I respond to praise and flattery, the way I respond to somebody trying to flatter me or somebody trying to bully me. All these reveal something in me. Therefore, education must concern itself profoundly with nurturing these arts. The art of listening, the art of seeing, the art of learning, and the art of discipline. So Krishnamurti writes out here, listening is an art not easily come by, because listening, it's something lot to be studied at depth later, because listening sounds so basic. We all, after all, a baby, it doesn't need to be taught how to listen. Yes, our ears are active when we are born. I don't have to teach my child how to listen. But listening is actually not just one simple thing. It's true that we can hear the sounds that each other's make, that we make. But when you speak to me, what all do I hear when you speak to me? There's much more than just the words that are coming from you. There are all the undertones that are in that. There's a lot that is being communicated which is not just in the words. And to become sensitive to what is underneath the words. And it's not just words, it may be also music. How to hear and understand what lies behind the music, which is same thing as what lies behind the words. Today we have that kind of sensitivity to listen to each other. We listen with the various depths of our being, but our listening is always from a particular point of view. We do not listen simply. There is always the intervening screen of our own thoughts, our own conclusions, and our own prejudices. To listen, there must be an inward quietness, a relaxed attention. Words are only the outward means of communication, but to commune beyond words, there must be an alert passivity. Those who love may listen, but it is rare to find a listener. It is only in listening that one hears the song of the words. Krishnamurti has described listening as potentially a miracle. And this may sound like a bit of an exaggeration, but it is not so. To be truly able to listen with that kind of depth, which allows you to really understand a human being and to really touch a human being in the most basic way possible, it is a miracle if one actually experiences that. And it can work miracles also. When you really hear something and it communicates into your heart, it can change your life, that simple thing. So can we make this miracle a reality? I think this has great significance in today's echo chamber world, dominated by ideology, dominated by personal opinion and by violence. Can I nurture a quality of listening in which I am truly in contact with the world? We will then comprehend the beauty of such listening. We will then know how such listening can be a miracle. Today a child reads so much, is so well informed through books, through the internet, and today ChatGPT and so on. We are drowning in words and explanations. We know too much, know in quotes. It may not be true knowledge, but we know, because we are filled with words. And the more words that we have in us, the less we actually see. We only see our own conclusions. We are filled with labels and reactions. If I wish to live intelligently and help bring about a good society, it becomes my responsibility to help nurture a culture in which first-hand seeing is valued, free of labels, free of explanations. And Krishnamurti writes here, the art of seeing is to observe without any distortion, seeing things exactly as they are, without being caught in the network of words. And then there is the art of learning, which brings about its own discipline. You see, learning today has a very unfortunate and bad connotation. We think of learning as mugging, cramming, just stuffing information into us. That's what children, that's what they get to understand is the meaning of the term learn. But learning is connected with the word discipline, because The word discipline is made up of disciple. Disciple is a learner. Which, so it says here, to acquire and learn is the function of the mind. By learning, I do not mean the cultivation of memory, but the capacity to think clearly and sanely without illusion, to start from facts and not from beliefs and ideals. Learning implies the love of understanding and the love of doing a thing for itself. You learn about the universe not out of pleasure or curiosity, but out of your relationship to the world. This is a fundamental line, that last line, because it questions the very basis of science itself. To learn about something, not merely because I'm curious about it, but because I'm related to it and I care about it. I think one of the most unfortunate things about life science today, for example, is I can be just curious about some species, and because I'm curious about it, I can do all kinds of experiments on it. It doesn't matter what I do. All I want to do is I want to find out more knowledge about it. But if I care about it, and in that caring I want to find out about it, that makes the whole world of difference. To care about something and to want to find out more through that caring, it's a huge difference. And I think to create that as part of our curriculum, not just curiosity. And I think curiosity as a word by itself has been overemphasized. It needs to be care first, and curiosity which comes out of care, not the other way around. Krishnamurti has given a emphasis to the word art, which is actually the original root meaning of the word. He says art means to put everything in its proper place. That is the root meaning of the word art. And what does that mean? To not give excessive importance to any single factor in life, so that everything has a proper place in its life. To not give excessive importance to success, which unfortunately we have begun to do in this country. Success has become terribly important. Achievement has become terribly important. Money, property and wealth, status have become unbelievably important in the world and certainly in our country. Personal appearance, very highly emphasized these days. Talent, ownership of talent. I think again in the previous talk, it was mentioned that education tends to focus on individual capability, individual achievement. You asked about that. But what is the right relationship to talent? Supposing I have a talent, supposing I am very good at some subject. How do I treat that? What's my relationship to that talent? Let's say I'm very good at music. What is it my private ownership? But that's not the way it is regarded. That's not how. Look at all our talent shows. Look at the way the world talks about talent. So we may have an idea that it should be something different, but in practice it is not that. So how do we create that feeling that it is not a personal possession? It's a great challenge. Can education help bring about such a holistic outlook? It must. We do not have a choice. So the last few slides, I'm going to take the question into something different. Today, the word religion has either we stop talking altogether about it, or if we talk about it, it goes in the direction of organized religion. Religion in the sense of belief, just holding on to a set of beliefs, of identity. I belong to this religion and you belong to that religion. All of which has nothing to do with religion. The moment you identify with some religion, it has nothing to do with religion. So, Krishnamurti has asked here, as you explore biology, history and mathematics, shouldn't you also explore the question of what religion is? I think one should be able to look at the world, not only nature, the tree, the birds, the flowers, and the beauty of life outside, but also look into oneself clearly, because there is all the history of mankind, the struggles, the ambitions, drives, temptations, arrogance, violence, stupidity, everything is there. So shouldn't you be concerned with all this and not just fragments of life? If one is so concerned, out of that comes intelligence, and out of intelligence one acts. I should add out here that Krishnamurti is very particular about the correct usage of words. The word intelligence today has come to mean intellect. So we say this person is much more intelligent than that person. We even have something called intelligence quotient, IQ, which is so absurd. You can't measure intelligence. What you're measuring is maybe problem-solving skill, but intelligence is not problem-solving skill. Intelligence is something far more subtle than that. It's not something as simple, and that's just a tool. Intellect is one part of intelligence. And what is intelligence? Intelligence is related to sensitivity. It's related to your ability to sense something beyond the obvious. Your capacity to sense something which has not been told to you. And the very word itself gives a hint to it. The word intelligence, in its original meaning of the word, is made up of interlinear, in between the lines. To be able to not only look at the lines, the words, but to see behind, the space between the words, the space between the notes, to have that sense of the deep sensitivity. And it's only that deep sensitivity to human beings that can save humanity today. Not just problem-solving ability. Problem-solving ability is only a small part of intelligence, and without that understanding of oneself, it can easily become ruthlessness. So now let me come to a few specifics that are taken up in our schools, and I feel they should be taken up in all schools, which is the extreme importance given to questions. We should encourage children to ask questions and be able to respond to those questions, and allow not just questions within an academic framework. That, of course, that is included. The questions in the sciences or history or whatever it is, but also questions of a general. So these are some questions which have actually been asked in talks between the children and Krishnamurti. Why do human beings fight? And they are taken up in what is written out there. We have some things called culture classes, which are general conversations. They are not devoted to any particular subjects. Why do human beings fight? Why do we suffer? Why must we study? Why do we want to be famous? Why are human beings proud? What's the difference between respect and love? Why do we find pleasure in our games and not in our studies? What is jealousy? Is the worship of God true religion? Why do we worship success? Why do we fear failure? What is power? Why do we worship and seek power? What is destiny? What does it mean to be simple or innocent? What makes us fear death? So here's one response that Krishnamurti gave to one student who actually asked that. Why must we read? That student asked. So he responded, why must you read? Just listen quietly. You never ask why you must play, why you must eat, why you must look at the river, why you are cruel, do you? You rebel and ask why you must do something only when you don't like to do it. But reading, playing, laughing, being cruel, being good, seeing the river, the clouds, all this is part of life. And if you don't know how to read, if you don't know how to walk, if you are unable to appreciate the beauty of a leaf, you are not living. You must understand the whole of life, not just one little part of it. That is why you must read. That is why you must look at the skies. That is why you must sing and dance and write poems and suffer and understand, for all that is life. Let's just look briefly, I have a few minutes, no? At a few points which I feel we need to emphasize in our schools. If you look around the world, one of the very troublesome matters is the worship of power. And we all know that famous phrase, power tends to corrupt, and absolute power corrupts absolutely. And there's this beautiful saying of Abraham Lincoln's: nearly all men can stand adversity, but if you want to test a man's character, give him power. Very insightful statement. How do we, power is not something which affects only old people. Children also are affected by it. They can have power relationships among themselves. So it's something which is very deep in us. How do we address it? If we don't say anything and just say, oh, let them grow up naturally, that's exactly how power stays. Because if it's there in me, it's going to come up later in life. So we have to initiate a conversation about it. And it's part of self-understanding to begin to understand my relationship with power, my need for power, the secret pleasure that I may be feeling out of a power relationship. So Krishnamurti writes out here, it's important to understand this thing we call power. Without understanding it, the capacity of doing things becomes a means of creating greater misery and greater suffering for man. And he adds, I think it's very important to understand power. You have to see if you can live in this world without dominating people. I think that's a great challenge for us, to live without dominating anybody, bullying people, overpowering people with your personality, without controlling them, without shaping their minds. It is true even in a school. I think the relationship between a teacher and a child is a very delicate one. If the teacher has too strong a personality, he can overwhelm the child, and just his personality gets forced onto a child. It's important that they have become aware of it. It is very important that we should create a feeling that this is our school, yours and mine. This feeling of ourness, he's invented a word out here, probably there's no such word. This feeling of ourness does not exist anywhere in the world. The feeling that this is our earth in which you and I and others can live and be free to find out the whole significance of living. I think this is the only spirit that is going to save the world. Not clever scientific inventions, but the sense that you and I are creating together in a world which is ours. That feeling of ourness does not exist in the world. Without that feeling, we will have no peace in the world. And you can see now all these, for example, right now in the press it is being reported, media, these meetings, the COP meetings are taking place. And they're finding it so difficult to make any progress at all. Because the battle for my country needs this, my country needs this, it's just mine. There's very little a sense of this is our world. Pollution doesn't affect just one country. Pollution in one country affects the next country. And yet we cling so hard to this idea, this is my country, it's only my country which matters. And we are mutually destroying each other. And that's why It is not clever scientific inventions, not some new gadget which will control pollution, which is going to save us. It's only our desire to cooperate. And he writes here to children, the hope of a new world is in those of you who begin to see what is false and revolt against it. Not just verbally, but actually. And that is why you should seek the right kind of education. For it is only when you grow in freedom that you can create a new world, not based on tradition or shaped according to the idiosyncrasy of some philosopher or idealist. But there can be no freedom as long as you are merely trying to become somebody or imitate a noble example. I just made a miscellany here, a list of things that are practiced in some of our schools here. One is culture classes at all levels. That is, there's a great emphasis given to discussion, to free discussion in which you take up a question and explore it together, not in the format of a debate that this team versus that team, me versus you, one point of view versus another point of view, but to actually explore it like a team of explorers would do, a team of scientists actually exploring a theme. Then, in that same spirit, emphasis on hands-on learning of the life sciences and the environment, which perhaps many schools are doing. Emphasis on arts and crafts and nurturing a sense of beauty, which is, I think, very, very important. A physical sense of beauty. Emphasis on getting to know local culture, in particular agriculture and art and craft. The next one is one particular initiative that Sahyadri School near Pune has taken up in great seriousness, preservation of lost varieties of seeds. For example, they have taken up in particular the preservation of rice seeds. It's slightly shocking to hear that around 100 years back, first few decades of the 1900s, apparently there were more than 100,000 varieties of rice in India. 100,000.
Table-Dev in Odisha still has preserved more than 1,000 varieties.
But today, from that 100,000, it has become
Few thousand.
yeah.
At least 1,000 still is there.
And in most places, it is nowhere near that number. Most places, the varieties are just lost. So in Sahyadri, I know that there are some people there who are actively going around to small towns and villages and searching out these varieties. Emphasis on non-competitive sports. And then there's a particular course called General Studies in class 11 where we study, again, it's a non-exam oriented thing. Study what's happening in the world basically in some of these areas. So there's so much to learn. Each of these is like a world in itself. Learning what it means to be simple. To be simple, there's a word in English called simpleton, which basically means you're a fool. Simple doesn't mean that. What does it mean to be simple? To be simple in the sense you don't manipulate people. You don't carry you're not a hidden person. Hidden layers inside you. Can you be simple? Can we actually be simple and in our dealings with each other? Learning not to react. Learning not to be divisive. Learning what it means to listen. Learning what cooperation means. Cooperation is something which we imagine that the current meaning given to that word cooperation is we cooperate around a task. That is, we are a team of cricket and we cooperate in the task of winning that game. Cooperation is always thought of as there's a task, we are together and this task we want to accomplish it. But what happens when the task is over? What happens to our relationship when the task comes to an end? Is there any relationship at all? Or we only got together for the purpose of that task? I think relationship is what is really important, not the task. And therefore, cooperation cannot be about tasks. It cannot be about goals. It has to be about relationship. Tasks and goals can only come out of a relationship. Then the relationship is what is this is the glue. It's the really important part of it. And I think in India we need to learn what it means to cooperate. Unfortunately, in our big cities, cooperation, the kind of civic disorder that we have in our cities is a complete denial of cooperation. We have to find ways of addressing this matter and learning to care for the earth and to love the earth. So this also is needs to be part of school. So finally, to close with some quotes, I'm going to read out one response that Krishnamurti gave to some children. One child who asked, very innocently, I want to go close to the birds, but they always run away when I go close. He says, this child asks, why do birds fly away when I come near? And he responds, he says, how nice it would be if the birds did not fly away when you came near. If you could touch them, be friendly with them, how lovely it would be. But you see, we human beings are cruel people. We kill the birds, we torture them, we catch them in nets and put them in cages. Think of a lovely parrot in a cage. Every evening it calls to its mate and sees the other birds flying across the open sky. When we do all these things to the birds, do you think they will not be frightened when we come near them? But if you sit quietly in an isolated spot and are very still, really gentle, you will soon find that the birds come to you. They hover quite close and you can observe their alert movements, their delicate claws, the extraordinary strength and beauty of their feathers. But to do that, you must have immense patience, which means you must have a great deal of love, and also there must be no fear. Animals seem to sense fear in us, and they in turn get frightened and run away. That is why it is very important to understand oneself. You try sitting very still under a tree, and not just for 2 or 3 minutes, because the birds won't get used to you in so short a time. Go and sit quietly under the same tree every day, and you will soon begin to be aware of everything around you is living. You will see the blades of grass sparkling in the sunshine, the ceaseless activity of the little birds, the extraordinary sheen of a snake, or a kite flying high in the skies, enjoying the breeze without a movement of its wings. But to see all this and to feel the joy of it, you must have real quietness inside you. In the last slide for the teachers and students, he says here. So teachers and students, do think about all this. Don't complain, but put your shoulder to the wheel and help to create an institution where religion in the right sense is investigated, loved, worked out and lived. Then you will find that life becomes astonishingly rich, far richer than all the bank accounts in the world.